This meeting is being recorded. 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 This meeting is being recorded.
All right, City of Rockaway Beach City Council Workshop on Wednesday, February 8th, 2023 at 5:01 p.m. All right, City of Rockaway Beach City Council Workshop on Wednesday, February 8th, 2023 at 5:01 p.m. All right, City of Rockaway Beach City Council Workshop on Wednesday, February 8th, 20. Here. Councilor McGinnis.
Present.
Mayor McNeely is present. All right, the first item for discussion is the council vacancy appointment process. The Rockaway Beach Charter states, quote, "A vacancy in the council shall be filled by appointment by a majority of the council. In this matter, the mayor is considered to have a vote," end quote, but no description of the process to be followed. As such, it is incumbent upon us to establish a process to fill the current council vacancy that reflects the importance of the role. And so just a couple of opening comments. I suggest that filling a council opening should entail a greater degree of due diligence than filling an opening on the Budget Committee or Planning Commission. The council has legislative authority for Rockaway Beach and approves or denies recommendations coming out of the Budget Committee and Planning Commission. And so just a couple of comments of what's currently available to apply. The online application that's available out there is really not great. It's kind of suboptimal. And I brought you some examples here. If you'll pass that down for me, all the way to Luke. I went in and attempted to fill out the application. And when I got to the two questions, it took me to the middle of the section and I started to type, and you'll see that it just types over top of that. So it's very difficult to fill out. Certainly we could improve on that form. And then the second copy is a copy from, this goes back to the Budget Committee. You'll see that the individual didn't have enough space to say what she wanted to say under the first question. So she kind of wrote down into the second question to do that. So again, I think the current application form is really limiting for our applicants, and also then becomes limiting for us as counselors, as people who would vote. Another comment, I've never been hired for a job without being interviewed. I've never hired an employee without first interviewing candidates. And point in fact, I was interviewed by the residents prior to being elected as mayor at the candidate forum. So now you all have in your packet my thoughts on a process to fill the current council vacancy that I believe improves on the application submittal and adds interviews by counselors of the top three candidates. Councilor McGinnis shared with us Bend, Oregon's process for filling vacant city council positions. Unlike the Bend process, I did not suggest an opportunity for the public to ask the candidates questions, but I do like this part of their process as it brings greater transparency to the selection process and engages the residents in vetting the candidates. I also like their voting process. I think that the process that they outlined for voting would get to the best candidate in the best possible way. I, however, would suggest we not interview all candidates, but limit interviews to the top three, and we work out a process to narrow a longer list of candidates down to three that best fits our situation. So those are my thoughts. I just open the floor for comments from councilors.
In the past, we've always had a form like this, but people just need to write a little bit smaller. Whereas, I went to college being an architect. I had to write real small, so I got real good at it. So you need a magnifying glass to really do what I wrote. But yeah, most people have always had a handwritten form they brought in.
May I add that please?
Yeah.
A year and a half ago, I applied for a vacancy and obviously was appointed. And I found the same issues with the application that you did. I actually rewrote the whole application on Microsoft Word and filled it out because I could not fill out that one. And because this was so limiting in experience, I attached probably a 6 or 7 page resume to the back of it. So I echo what you said about how this could be beefed up a little bit, a lot actually. Then you mentioned that I had submitted to Luke to disseminate how Ben does their process. They sort of had a controversy a couple of years ago for not being transparent when they had to fill a vacancy seat, and it upset a lot of people in town. So they just 2 years ago, or about 2 years ago, underwent a real rigorous process, but basically it involves attaching a resume to the written application and interviewing all the candidates in public. The public doesn't, in that situation, gets to submit questions in writing to the council, but, and then the council interviews. So at the League of Oregon Cities meeting that we attended last week, after the meeting, Councilor Cheek and I were there in person. And so we asked the cities of Astoria and Seaside how they fill council vacancies, and they do it almost identically to Ben's. They require some kind of a written statement or resume along with the application, and they do interviews. Then I talked to the mayor of Garibaldi, and they do the same thing. So it's sort of, he did not say the interviews. He said they require written resume and statement. And I actually didn't ask him about the interviews. So it seems like all around us, it's a common practice for people to get a little bit more information before they make their vote. And for the public to get a little more information too, because this is really about the public.
Can I add a few things?
Yes, please.
City Manager Shepherd, of course.
Yeah, thank you. So what I need from you all, I guess, is kind of a consensus on a rough idea what the process is going to look like. It sounds like there's some of you are in favor of adding a little more rigor to the process. Is that true? Is there a consensus to?
I like what they're speaking to about the interviews, because there might be an applicant that we're not familiar with. And I know when we did the budget committee that a gentleman came over and spoke, and someone here said, well, if I had heard you talk, they didn't know each other. And so I like the interview part. And I think the form just needs updated. I think we probably just did this,
A long time
for the
ago.
programs that we're using now.
I like the idea of having the resume in it,
Yeah, and I like that too.
but I don't really, not real fond of the idea of having somebody to have to come up and interview in front of the whole city. When you interview for a job, you don't go before the whole company and interview. You interview between the heads of the company that are hired to do those things. But I think with all the public input, we will get enough input from the public between now and March to get a good grasp on what they're thinking.
So the three questions that, if we're talking about interviewing, just the three questions that Charles spoke to are enough for me to know. Those are the things I'm interested in, and what experience do you have? Why do you want to do it? And are you committed? I guess that seems like an interview.
Yes.
For me. Maybe if we could just ask them those three questions. Are you guys saying more? In an interview process?
I'm a big fan of interviewing the candidates. I appreciate Council President Cheek that in businesses, when I've been interviewed, at most it was a panel of
Yes.
people. But that's very different than what we're doing here. We're standing in for the voters.
I
So,
understand that.
in
and I
standing in
understand
for
we
the
do
voters,
that.
I believe the voters need to be part of that process, part of the interview, and hear what the candidates
We're
have to
allowing
say,
them to meet the candidates.
that it would be a public meeting, that the interviews would take place. That's just my perspective.
And, if you all would like to have interviews, we do need to have them be public.
Yeah.
So if there are interviews, we've got to do them at a meeting. You all will be here to be quorum. There's no way around that. If we do interviews.
Mary, are you seeing more to the interview than the questions that Charles?
I really like the ones that you submitted, Charles. And I did just add one more question, which followed after the one, are you willing to attend city council meetings and training events? I added, are you willing to engage in activities in the city too? Which probably most of the people who would apply would be engaged in the activities, but occasionally people apply and they never have come to us, or at least in recent years, they haven't come to a city council meeting or planning commission meeting or, been involved in any activities of the city. So that's just the other, it's not have you been, but it would be, I would word it as, are you willing to engage?
And I like the interviewing just the top 3 people, not everyone.
That's a better way to
Yeah,
do
I
it.
agree.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
I wouldn't want to put everyone up.
No, I think we're all in agreement that we may not get 3, but if we get more than 3, we winnow it down to the top 3 based on what they submit in the application and our discussion.
So would that, winnowing it down to the top 3, wouldn't that have to be done in a public meeting also?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there'd be one piece and then the next one maybe.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The only piece I would add to what you two or what we've come with as a group so far together is that to me, the person who might be moving or leaving the earth or what have you, whoever's vacating the seat, sometimes to me, their opinion matters. And so for me, replacing Cindy Kay, what I want to choose is someone who reflects what the citizens voted her for. And so when I look to the world around her, it would be people who helped with the campaign or worked on the listening sessions, or for me, voting to replace her, I want the closest thing to her because that's what you all voted for. And that's my job, is to give you what you've asked. And so, does that make sense? And so to me, what Keith Cantrell, when he moved, his suggestion mattered to me, who he wanted to replace him or thought would do the best job to be like he was because he'd been voted for. That made the most sense to me. Or it's a component to me, maybe not the single most factor, but I think it's important. And I don't know how we would word that or how we would describe that, but I don't know. I don't even know that Cindy Kay, when she was present with us, that she would have told us there was someone in her life or not. But Keith Cantrell did make some suggestions. And I don't think we went with those suggestions. And I'm really happy to have Mary here. And I voted
So what's
for
the
Mary.
problem, Counselor?
I just, to me, that's also an important component. I think.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and some of that's the nice thing about interviewing candidates is you can hear how they think, hear how they present themselves, expand on what we gather in our application. So
I also want to say something else too. I think that the public has to trust that we have integrity.
Mhm.
And I will use myself as an example. I had never had a conversation with Tom ever in my entire life, and he voted for me to be on it. And I had only talked to Terry when she was on the council about paying my fee for the garden. It was only, you know what I mean? So we just have to trust somewhat the integrity of the council, that we're not going to just pick our best friends. Is what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. We're going to pick people that we think would be suited for the position. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Small town. Everybody knows everyone else.
Yeah.
So pretty much know who we're talking about.
The first time I got on is I filled out an application just to replace somebody that was leaving. And I was just told to come to the meeting. They're going to make a decision there. I didn't know I was supposed to be interviewed or anything. And they wanted me to get up at the podium and talk about myself. And it's kind of awkward, but and I think there's 3 of us that there's a couple of positions we filled. There's 3 or 4 of us who got up and spoke. But I also think that it's good to see how people can talk in front of a group of people. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The public speaking scares the heck out of them. They can't be up here.
Right. Good point. Well, if you all want to turn to what I submitted, you have it right there. No, that's right here. Submitted by Mayor Charles McNeely. Are we all comfortable with approaching it as I've outlined here?
How do we say that without voting? Because we can't vote at a workshop.
No,
No,
So how do we say we're comfortable with it without voting?
All I need is a consensus to draft something
Okay.
from what I'm hearing tonight.
Go forward.
If there was a real contentious atmosphere, we'd have to move it to a regular session. But it sounds like for the most part, all of you are on board. So what I have so far is, and I'm going off of what you submitted there. We're going to update the form, the application form, ask for a resume. We've got an interview, 3 questions listed here. If there are more than 3, we'll winnow them down a bit. Council will do that, and the 3 applicants will hold the interview. They'll make the selection. So if there's anything you want to add to that, let me know.
Is there a reason we wouldn't do this for the planning and the budget too?
I'm not going there.
I think that's a good discussion for a different time.
Yeah.
oh, yes, I don't
Yeah.
think right now would be,
Will you bring
we
it
have
up
quite a
first?
long list of other things we need to talk
Yeah.
about, so let's put that on an agenda, maybe some in the near future.
And so if using what the mayor submitted and what I just spoke about, I can put something together by the end of the week and get it posted. There's a few other details we do want to discuss though, before we move on. I'll let you know what those are. So we need some dates. Wait, and I'm assuming you all are okay with that process we outlined.
Can I just, before you, yeah, we need to go there, but I really like on the bend, it's number 3, the recruitment process. They really outline a rather broad-based advertising of the opening position, so, for the open position. So I would just ask that we build into our process as many communication channels as we can use to let people know that we have a vacant council position and this is the process they're going to go through to apply for it.
Good, that's my second question for you all.
Oh, wow.
Number 1 though is we need to pick an application deadline and we need to pick a date for the interviews. So March 8th is our next workshop and council meeting. After that, we have an April 12th council meeting and workshop. Or council meeting anyway.
Well, let me ask, does anybody have a length of time that you'd want the application process to be open? Is 30 days appropriate?
I think it's fine. I think most people who are interested know, don't you all?
it's too easy to stretch it out too far.
Yeah.
So 30 days for the duration? So it would depend on how soon we can advertise the position.
Wouldn't 30 days put it right at our next city council
It will.
meeting?
Exactly.
I think we can get most of it out by the end of this week.
Okay,
If we want to get packets out the week before, then we'll shave 1 week off of that 30 days.
okay.
So we can get in the packets.
Yeah, we needed them before. I mean, if it's not, if we leave it open until the next 30 days, for 30 days, that means we walk into the city council meeting not having had time to review the applicants.
Okay.
So we need to cut it off at least by a week ahead of time, by March the 1st, so that we have a week to review the
When
applicants
we pick up our packets.
and when we pick up our package, yeah.
Perfect.
Perfect. Okay.
So, and if we get more than 3, so we can do, I'll figure it out, but yeah, so March 8th, we'll look at interviews. Due date will be the week before. And if we get more than 3 applicants, it might be a long council meeting night to do a selection process down to 3 and then the interviews. If it looks like, we get 10 applicants, maybe we'll bump the interviews to a different meeting. But we can play that by ear, I think. So as far as posting goes, website, city social media, post office, city hall, we can notice the Headlight Herald
Mhm.
and the Pioneer. We can email it out on our listserv.
I wanted to especially make sure it gets in the Pioneer because they don't charge for people to look at their website. And I think that'll reach more people.
Yeah, and as far as the headlight Arab goes, if it's not an article, it's gonna be in the back of the paper with the other public notices, and I don't know that that gets to anybody.
Yeah.
If there's no legal requirement to have the notice back there, you know, we could exclude the headlight Herald. If like,
Maybe they'll do a story, who knows?
Yeah, yeah, I think it's worth,
and the deadline for the headlight Herald, I think, is maybe noon tomorrow anyway, to get it out in next week's paper. So we'll do our best to put everything together and get it out to the headlight Herald, but I don't know that, I'm not gonna make any promises on that.
Would it be acceptable for both of the newspapers, or at least one of them, to interview the mayor and just say, this is what we're doing and this is the process or something, rather than just put that application out for the people to look at? Or would you want them to interview you? Or
No.
I sort of expected that answer.
nice to offer it to him.
I'm gonna stay in my lane. Picking the next council member is not something the city manager needs.
No, but I mean, maybe, you know, with just a quick interview that
Sure.
just says something like, we have this position open, and this is our procedure we're going to follow, this is the deadlines, you know, just a quick something like that, yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to participate in an interview.
Okay, so, all right, perfect.
And are you, I've got one more item related to this.
Oh, me too.
Okay, you go ahead.
All right.
I'll let you
We
finish.
covered the interview questions, we got those three.
Those are the application questions, not the interview questions.
Oh,
Yeah, I just pulled those from the
I think
application.
we might be on a different page here.
Yeah, those are the application questions that we currently, so if you look at the application I gave you, you'll see that
Those are on the application.
those are on the application. So to me, those are application questions. We as counselors and mayor will come to the interview with questions that we want to ask that we think will help elicit information about the person. This is simply their first salvo to make a case
Yeah.
for themselves.
So what, both CISA.
I think the understanding from other members was that those were gonna be the
Yeah.
interview questions.
That's what, I thought.
And
That's what they
I'm
were.
okay with adding other questions, but I don't think we should do too much. Or
No,
too-
I don't either.
And we could, even though they're on the application, they could also become our interview questions, because we could ask them to expand on it.
Sure,
Well,
sure.
and if they're giving us a resume, we're gonna be reading it
Yeah,
also, so let's not cover the,
Well, I would very much like the option to ask at least one additional question to what's on here. And I was going to suggest that each counselor and the mayor get to ask one question.
I like
I
that.
didn't want it to be
yeah,
a free-for-all, but we all can come to the table with a question that we would like to ask. And each candidate would get asked the same question.
Yeah, I like that.
that's what Seaside and Astorial said they did. Each person asked one question,
Yeah.
and they asked all the candidates the same question,
Yeah.
to make it fair.
I think that's a great idea.
So again, I just took these right from the application that's out there right now. Other than I attach a current resume to it. So, and then each of us would come to the meeting, the interview session, with a question that we would ask. that we think-
Would you all like those questions to be known in advance?
No,
See if they can think on their feet.
I think kind of the cool part about maybe learning about the person is having them do spontaneous.
Okay.
It could be as simple as, do you like to garden or something, or, you know, what is your favorite thing about Rockaway? Or I like the spontaneity of it, because I think it makes us, I would be more sincere and authentic. If it's on paper, I'm gonna think it out, you know, and I wanna get to know the person.
So we would ask the candidates to step outside and bring
Yeah.
them into the meeting
Yeah.
one at a time. So the third
they-
candidate didn't have the time to think about the questions and have an advantage over the person that got
Yeah.
hit with them cold. Okay. I'm good with that. But again, yeah, I think one question each makes a lot of sense.
So the first three will be on the application. You all will each come up with your own question.
Yeah.
For the process, interview.
And you're just going to improve the quality of the user experience with the online application? Or do we want to ask them to submit a letter answering these questions?
I like the letter for the 3 questions.
Okay.
We don't have to guess how much room they're gonna need.
Okay. Okay.
And, so in the, once the interview is complete, we could keep the same process where you all have a discussion, make a motion, through elections. Ben uses a ballot system.
And that's what my last point was. I'd like to move to Ben's approach. We'd have a discussion, obviously, and share our thoughts, but I think Ben's approach is a more efficient, gets to the best answer the fastest. So I'm a big fan of the approach they use.
So we vote by ballot and then they're read at the end, is that?
Yeah, I mean, it gets.
We've done that in the past.
Yeah. Okay.
As long as it becomes public.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I don't want it to be. It's not. I don't mean it to be a secret ballot, but we fill out a ballot.
We
It
can't
gets
do this.
tabulated and then it gets revealed. The big reveal.
That's all I had, all my questions. Okay, we can do that. Certainly can.
And maybe just to clarify, because we discussed a lot of things, Mayor, you and the city manager can talk before your interview with the papers to make sure that
Yeah.
everything is.
Oh, yeah, I will.
Okay.
Poor city manager Shepherd, he's stuck with me for 2 years. Are we good with this?
I'm satisfied.
Okay. Chair recognizes city manager Shepherd to lead a discussion on meeting rules and procedures.
All right, so this came up late last year. I think you'll have seen the league's model rules, model meeting rules. I've included in our packets our current rules. I think you'll have seen those before. I've had some time to look over both sets. And, from what I can see, our existing rules, they're not too bad, but, there are some places we should probably make some changes. And the league rules, I think, are fine, but they are a little much for us. It's 32 pages, it's 8 or 9 chapters. It's a little unwieldy. So my suggestion is to, instead of repealing the rules we have, existing rules, completely starting over, we can amend the rules we have. We can take some of the things we don't like about our current rules, mix in some of the items from the league's set of rules, and I can put together a draft. We all take a look at the next workshop. We can have more of a discussion on it. And I'd be happy to kind of go over some of the things I like and don't like about each one, and then open it up to you all.
Before we start a discussion, I'd like clarification on the process for this. Since this is currently codified in ordinance, do we have to follow all the regular procedures? I'm sure we do, of revising an ordinance where we have 2 public readings and a public hearing?
I don't know that that's necessary.
Okay,
The attorney will make that call.
okay,
I think it's the first page. It says these rules can be amended by a majority vote of the council. So that leads me to believe it could be a resolution.
Because we're revising what we've already.
Yeah.
okay. I just wanted to see.
And the league's model rules have 2 different avenues for changing. An amendment would be through resolution, an appeal and replacement would be as an ordinance. But ours looks like it would be through resolution. We can make some amendments to it. So anyway, there's only 3 items I'm not happy with about the current rules. One is the order of business. We don't typically follow that order of business anymore. Section 3.5.
Yes. Yeah, I had.
Obviously, we have fire department and public works and sheriff's office reports, I report, and those aren't included. We don't typically have an attorney present. And the league's model, order of business looks a little, looks better than me.
I agree with you. This needs to map to what we're currently doing. I think our order of business is fine. So I would say just reflect that in our meeting rules.
So if we're revising our old draft, we're just taking out the attorney, is that correct?
Well, I did a crosswalk through the League of Oregon Cities with everything. And it's more than just taking out one thing. I'm like you, I thought theirs was pretty efficient.
Yeah.
But one of the things that they suggest is non-agenda item speakers be at the end of the meeting. And I think we have that before, we actually have it listed at the very beginning, before even the departments give their,
Oh, you're right.
No,
their,
it comes after staff reports.
I'm talking about in
Oh,
the
you mean-
law.
oh, yeah.
Not what we do, but in the law.
We're not following.
We're not following the law.
Yeah.
Because we've realized it doesn't really work for us. And so we just kind of, ignored the law. But, so that's one thing that has started a few months ago, that we started doing non-agenda speakers at the end. And I think that works pretty well myself.
So, may I?
Yeah.
So when I started coming to council meetings, the public comment on the agenda items was where it was now. It got moved to the end and it created a hailstorm when it got moved later in the meeting. So I would prefer that we keep it where it is.
At the beginning of the meeting?
Well, right after, not what's in here, but modify this to where it is today after staff reports.
Oh, so he wants it down a little bit, but not at the top. Like-
Yeah.
So this is what we've adopted.
Yeah,
It would be the sixth thing in what we've adopted. And you want to go to,
Yeah, I mean, right now we do a call to order as number
and
one.
I kind of have to agree with that, because I think there are folks that just want to come share with us and then leave. And
Yeah.
they don't want to suffer the rest of the meeting, and they just want to know about the car park on 6th Street or whatever. And I think they said they're really upset and angry and frustrated because they're listening to presentations and stuff they don't want to be involved in.
Okay. No, I can do either way. My thinking was sometimes it gets really long. If they each get 5 minutes to speak and there's 6 or 7 speakers, it can go on for over a half hour. And if that's at the front of the meeting, it delays everything else we're doing. That was my only thinking is the time for it.
Hopefully that process will go smoother as we iron out some of the processes, right? Don't look at me like that.
Well, I will,
Rebirth.
I'll make some changes and it's up to the council. You guys can,
Okay.
sort it out at our next get together. The other item.
Well, can I go over the rest of that?
Oh, sure,
That one
sure.
section. So I thought for number 7, where you mentioned that it just says Public Works, why do we even have to mention any specific department? Why can't we just say department reports and leave that general?
Yeah, and the league
And not
says,
mention any.
reports, just a little more open-ended.
Let's see if that was another one. No, those were the 2 I caught in that one.
I do have a question about this, is if they want to do recording in the proceedings, they have to give us 24 hours or whatever. I actually think by state law where I don't know that we can do that. And the reason I think that is because somebody came in and videotaped the meetings and it was challenged. And we called the attorney and the attorney said, no, you have to let them tape by law. That was upstairs in the council meeting.
But that was the next one on my list too, right? It just doesn't apply these days. Everybody's got a phone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's-
and everybody can
We're
just sit.
recording it 2 different
on Zoom.
ways
Okay.
and audio. I think
So we should just strike that maybe?
that was my
The
plan.
24-hour notice, strike that one, okay.
I just don't think we can do that.
And then, speaking by members of the audience, 3.12A, I think.
What page is that?
Please find that for me.
On ours,
And which one are you at?
Yeah, we're on the existing. Yes, this is the first one there on page 6. 3.12A. There's basically my comment is, it's a little restrictive. We don't want to get into regulating the content of somebody's speech. So the league does a much better job of addressing that. So that would be one section I would kind of probably mostly move out and move into leagues.
So I don't.
Go ahead.
Well, so I can ask Danny a question when he's giving the report, and I don't have to ask Luke to ask him the question, right? Am I understanding? Yeah.
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 And that's
appreciate
the
that.
model the league uses, is we can just directly ask people questions.
During, council during staff reports. Yeah. can ask
Thank you.
questions, yeah.
So that was another, this one needs to be reworked because we don't do anything like this in our current meetings. I do though not want to go to the 3-minute limit as the league suggests. I'd like to stay with our 5-minute duration time limit.
Those are really the only issues I had with our existing set of rules. There are a few items I'd like to add from the leagues, and I don't know if you guys want to go into detail on those, or I can just kind of briefly talk about. I'll just start. So the league's model rules, they do a much better job of covering the process for public hearings. I would just move that in wholesale into our new rules.
Good with that.
They talk about work sessions in a little bit more detail in our current plan, current set of rules. They deal with the process for land use hearing and appeals on land use decisions from the planning commission at all. Ours doesn't whatsoever. Fortunately, that hasn't been an issue for us, but someday it might be. There's actually a process in place for that. It's got a nice ethics and decorum section.
And much more thorough than ours is. Our section on ethics is really brief. I would move all of the League of Oregon Cities wording in place of ours.
And then, other than that, I didn't see anything that had to be moved over in the league's set of rules.
Is there a portion in here about public notice besides special emergency meetings?
Yeah, it does talk about the time frame for getting the meeting material out and meeting notices out.
Okay. I'd like to add something about posting electronically for like emergency meetings. And especially emergency meetings, like if we have like a broken water line and we need to come together and vote on something, I'd like to post about it electronically. I think a lot of people, or maybe are you calling it Lista, the email?
Listserv.
Listserv? Is that?
Listserv.
Listserv, okay. So that's a broadcast email, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Or maybe those two items. Just because I think we're moving into the electronic age where people are not going to the post office and reading, and the bank is closed. And I know a lot of people use the bank to look at agendas and things a lot. And so, I used to pass through there all the time, and now I don't have that in my life. And so I don't necessarily always check our mail anymore either. So could we do that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
There's 3 just like housekeeping things that would clean it up a little bit. On page 2, where it says council president and emergency meetings, they misnumbered emergency meetings. They have 2.3 and 2.3 again. And the second 2.3 under emergency meetings should actually be 2.4. And if we're ever making a reference to it, and we tell people where to look, that's important. And, okay, so this one kind of bothered me too. On page 6, there's an incomplete sentence. It says, if the presiding officer determines that such an item is inappropriate for discussions, period. So could we, I think all they need to do is put a comma after discussion and make the T on the a small t and make that all one sentence. But it just shows sloppiness. And by the way, for the people in the audience, these were written 16 years ago. This is a long, our city ordinance actually says that they need to be updated every 2 years. So we may find as we go through it and look at it again next month that, oh, wait a minute, there was even more. But also on page 2, 2.2 talks about what the mayor does. 2.3 talks about what the council president does. But in between them, they sliced in special meetings. And then after them, they put in emergency meetings. It would be much better to flow if the mayor's function and then the council president's function was one after the other, and then just put all the meetings together after that instead of throwing them in the middle of something else. Those were just my 3 housekeeping things that I just thought, when we're asking people to go back and look at this, and if we can't direct them in the right place, then it makes it difficult. And there are people in our community who want to know the exact spot to find stuff. And they should know.
Titled authority workshops, so they should
Yeah.
go under the right heading.
Yeah, let me see. And actually ours were really good. For something that was written 16 years ago, they're really solid. And I appreciated that because like I said, I did a crosswalk item by item with League of Oregon Cities, and we hit it pretty well.
Anything else?
Half of them are passed away.
Council President Cheek, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Councilor Martine?
I think it's good.
While you're looking, I'm going to just throw a few things out.
Yeah.
In the League of Oregon Cities, I really like Chapter 2, the things about meeting time, location, and frequency. And maybe you've already said this, but there's some really good stuff in there that I think we would up our game in our meetings and workshop section.
Which one's that?
It's Chapter 2, meeting time, location, and frequency. It's the description of all the meetings and times and those kinds. I just think they did a really nice job of that, and would be worth pulling some of that stuff in as appropriate. We've talked about counselor decorum 3.7, 3.8, 3.9. That doesn't. I mean, does that fit for everybody, or do we need to look to the League of Oregon Cities to update that section?
If I remember right, I think I favored what the league had.
Okay. Did you already say that? I'm sorry. Good.
Yeah.
All right. I'm good with that. That's good. Okay. Let's see. We're going to rework that.
Does that include the audience decorum also?
Yeah, I like
in it?
that part. We want to make sure and keep that or have something. What do you think?
I think the League of Oregon Cities has something for that too.
I like what this says, but I don't have the link part. That wasn't in my packet.
No, I take that back. I have a note here that that the League of Oregon Cities did not include audience decorum. So we should keep ours, I guess. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm going to look into, I don't think that was an accident. I'm concerned that controlling the audience is not, there's there's some difficulty in doing that. And that's probably why it's not included, but I'll look into that.
And maybe ask the city attorney about what's legal to do, First Amendment rights.
yeah,
What's
exactly,
legal, what's not legal. Yeah.
I want to make sure whatever we have, we can enforce. I don't have any worry about.
And then I don't think it's addressed in any way in our current meeting rules, but as I did the first meeting last month, and as I thought about this meeting and thinking about the process of adjournment, I wanted to float the idea with all of you. If you thought when we reach the end of the meeting and it's clear it's time to adjourn the meeting, seems to me taking a motion and a second and a vote to adjourn the meeting is kind of one step too far. And perhaps we should authorize the mayor to check with the councilors that everything's ready to end, and then he or she just simply adjourns the meeting.
I don't know how I feel about that. I think we'd have to research that a little bit.
I looked it up, and Robert Rules of Order actually says we can do it either way.
Really.
Yeah, it gives us the option. Yeah. I
It's
have-
20 seconds to do it the way we do it, so.
Yeah. I've never seen it done without a vote, but that doesn't.
I'm more comfortable with exploding and
Okay.
ending it.
And then I got,
Did you have a concern about that? Like,
Just-
a situation might come up where that'd be necessary.
well, the other issue is if a meeting gets out of hand, the mayor has the opportunity to have a pause and take a recess. So those are two ways that the mayor can bring a meeting back under control. The third one that was recommended at the mayor's training session I went to was to adjourn the meeting. But we have that's not in our rules. So I can pause a meeting, I can recess a meeting for a period of time while things settle down. But the mayor doesn't have authority to adjourn, which is one of the tools that they talk about for when meetings really get out of hand. Not that it'll ever happen here.
Well, we do have a police.
I'm not recommending we get out of hand.
No, Charles, we do have a police officer here, and if we've got an individual that's refusing to get down or disrupting the meeting, you can, or any of us in the council can actually ask the police officer to handle it, and they can be arrested for doing that, disturbing the peace.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm not opposed to the adjourn part. My untrusting part of me, it's dependent upon trusting the mayor, and so I have had a citizen sit in the audience and cuss at me, and no one has done anything, and I don't want to see anybody abused like that. I don't think it's good for us to have staff members that are, I don't want young women seeing me cussed out and called names. And so I'm kind of in favor of it. I guess I could go either way,
Well, what I think I heard was we'll just leave the adjourning of meetings the way it is, which great. That's a good discussion. Thank you for that.
Maybe next time I'll motion to close.
Yeah.
Well, I think the city, if you needed to recess the meeting, I think the city council could also vote to recess too. So all these things that you mentioned, I think could be done with the vote of city council.
Perfect. And then I instituted last meeting voice votes for things that weren't resolutions or ordinances. Do we need to codify that in our meeting rules if that's acceptable?
The only issue is making sure we get it on the audio,
Right.
and sometimes that's difficult. So, I mean, it'd be nice if procedurally to do a roll call at every vote, just for the recording.
And I picked that up from going to other city councils. Other city councils do it that way. But
It could also be, if you wanted to summarize, all unanimous vote.
Okay.
One dissenting vote, council chief,
okay,
just for the record, so we.
perfect.
we all kind of-
I will do that. Okay.
Yeah, because it says on page 7, the vote of every motion shall be taken by roll call. And so we would definitely need to completely change that. And I'm not sure if Robert's Rules of Order says only certain things can be a voice vote, I think, not everything.
Doesn't that have to be unanimous?
That's a consensus vote.
Right.
Yeah. I kind of like having the roll call, and then people are on record.
Mhm.
Well, and then it shows in the minutes, right?
Yes.
I
Okay.
was nodding yes, I agree.
Do you agree?
That's all I have.
All right, well, I think I can work on that. Let's put a draft together and we can talk about the next workshop. Yeah, should be good. If we have time, it'd be nice to fit in the planning commission's request to discuss the tree ordinance. It was, seemed like an important issue at the time of the last council meeting. Councilor McGinnis, you were there. I think what they're asking for is to go ahead from the council to look at a limited scope tree ordinance. And my understanding was they'd like to regulate cutting of large conifer trees on private property is what my understanding was. And we want to bring that back to the city council because that could have some ramifications around town. Council we could pick it up at the next workshop if you want to have a more in-depth discussion on that.
Could I add a clarification as the liaison from council to the planning commission? They didn't specifically say they wanted to limit cutting of trees. They said they wanted to study it. And there's a big difference in that. And so I think what we would actually be looking at, Bill, is that right? Is for a study. And so we would just be saying, yeah, this is something we think that might come up that would be important to know. So yes, go ahead and study it. I think some people came to the last planning commission, some of the commissioners came to the last planning commission and they had been researching what other cities on the North Coast have in their ordinances and what they've been doing.
So we're asking them to go forward and look at it further in the agenda. Is that, okay? Because I think it's a risky place to go to.
And I brought it up to Luke and I said, this is something that could have a lot of varying opinions in the town. So city council should just be aware that it's a discussion item in the planning commission.
I got a call from a citizen asking me if the planning commission, I mean, they were upset about it. And I missed that part of, I zoomed into part of the meeting, but I only got the end of it. And so the discussion had already happened. So it made me wonder what was discussed, but I didn't get it out. So
It sounds like it's something we want to revisit at another workshop.
Yeah, at the start of the workshop.
Start of a workshop.
Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe get a little more detail from the planning commission, because the planning commission has only just begun the conversation around it.
We can't really make very many decisions until they give
Yeah.
us something to work with.
Yeah, and looking into this, it's gonna take staff time and resources. So it would be nice to have the council's backing before we took off on that. So, okay,
So we're bringing it back
we'll
to
bring it back.
the next workshop. Okay. And then, Shepherd, you want to talk about the agenda items for the upcoming meeting?
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to add, and I wish we had a little bit more time, I handed out the proposal for tonight, but it's the annotated version. So it's in green on page 4, 5, and 6. It's got the edits from the previous version. These are already included in the version in the resolution, but I want to call this to your attention so you know exactly what the changes were. And we can talk about this more at the council meeting, or I can run through them now. And maybe it'd be better to do it at the council meeting.
I was gonna say, we have about 5 minutes. I don't know if that would be enough time.
Yeah, well, I can give it a shot.
Okay,
So I worked with John Paul. We made some changes to the proposal. Number one was a pretty significant cost reduction over the original version, down about to $10,000. And in return, we did have to acknowledge that there are a lot of unknowns with this project. And so one of the changes made is that the first step is going to be kind of conducting a landscape assessment. So he's going to engage with ODOT and community paths, program manager, Region 2, ODOT Region 2 leadership, and kind of vet the assumptions that we have, clarify the process, and establish the timelines that ODOT's working with on their portion of the grant. And then, of course, if there are any major differences between our assumption and what the reality is, where ODOT is, then we'll have to get back together. So that was some of the big changes there. The landscape assessment, and taking some time to see where we're really at, because there are quite a few unknowns.
So is this like a possible change order? Am I understanding correctly?
It's possible, yeah.
Okay, that's what I'm getting.
real quickly, could you define landscape assessment?
Yeah, that's basically looking at all the different players, all the different agencies, all the funding sources, and seeing where everybody's at, what the rules are, where they're at in the process, what's their process for procurement, what's their timelines on procurement, how the different agencies are going to work together, who's making the decisions, all of that. It's something right off the bat he's going to look into, and just see what the landscape's like.
Okay.
For Rockaway.
So that could additionally be plus the $12,000 on the next page, is that right?
Not part of this contract, no.
Okay, additional to this,
They'd have to come back to the
the
council.
budget on the next
Yeah,
page.
they'd come back to the council if there's any significant changes. But yeah, so. They included the monthly report that was asked for as well, a monthly council report.
That's good.
And that was it, just a few minor changes to the proposal. They're all included in the exhibit A or B in the resolution. I think that's all I really need to mention.
Well, thank you for taking our concerns back to that consulting company and working with John Paul on our concerns.
Anytime.
Thank you. Any further workshop business? All right, if not, may I have a motion to adjourn our meeting?
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I
Second,
second it.
all in favor? Oh, nope, we'll do a roll call, excuse me. Council President Cheek,
Yes.
Councilor Hayes,
Yes.
Councilor Martine,
Yes.
Councilor McGinnis.
Yes.
We are adjourned at 6 o'clock on Wednesday, February 8th, 2023.